This past weekend, we have completed what may just have been the greatest weekend to hit esports yet. This is the 78th round of EVV Gaming's Losers Bracket podcast, and wow, MLG Anaheim 2011 and EVO 2011 both wrapping up this past weekend, and both were absolutely amazing events. Let's start out with the fighting game tournament. We got EVO 2011 that just happened, and wow, amazing results the whole way around. This week on the show, we do have two guests with us to discuss all the things that did happen this past week in competitive gaming. Joining us is Goldenboy for the win, Call of Duty player, as well as our very own VVV Nynjatic from VVV Fly Society. Guys, thank you both for coming back on to Losers Bracket yet again. How are you all doing today?
I'm doing good. Fantastic. Because I had the greatest weekend of my life sitting on my chair watching esports. So I can't complain.
Yeah, and I'm doing good too. I wish I was there watching Evo, but I was at MLG Anaheim getting Fly Society as far as they could, having fun though, repping VVV, and now I'm back home on the podcast and at home. It's like all my homes just wrapped up into one.
Awesome. And we are going to talk about VV Fly Society in just a little bit, your top 16 finish at Anaheim. But first, let's talk about VVV Rio. Mortal Kombat 9, EVO, absolutely amazing run. He ends up getting knocked into the losers bracket a little bit early after taking a good place in his pool, but he comes back the whole way, makes it all the way to the end, top 8, finals, championship Sunday, runs through the competition, makes it all the way to the grand finals, and ends up taking a second place, falling to Perfect Legend after knocking him to the losers bracket. Jerry, this is a story for the ages, especially with what we heard last week on the show, where the Mortal Kombat community actually took up a collection just to help him get to the event. I know that you're just as thrilled as I am, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I mean, for me, it was one of those whether or not Mortal Kombat 9 should be on the MLG Pro circuit. That's really what this was about for me, looking at it from that perspective. Some of the fighting community have said, we'll see Mortal Kombat 9 at EVO and nothing else. And in looking at it, I think that would be a horrible mistake. Mortal Kombat 9 is, to me, remarkably spectator-friendly. I was reading something in a magazine where one fighting player said, if you're ahead in Mortal Kombat 9, it is very difficult, if near impossible, for the other player to catch up. Well, that was wrong. That was absolutely wrong. We watched Rio very closely, and I think Rio many times found himself behind, and he would come back to win. The idea that because of the breaker system inside the game, for those of you who may not know a lot about Mortal Kombat 9, if you develop enough, we'll call it energy, for those who don't know what I'm talking about, but you can build up to a point where you're allowed to break someone else's combos. And if you have that, obviously, you can mitigate somebody's ability to basically unleash a pretty severe combo on you. I see Mortal Kombat 9 as just great to watch. The fatalities are great to watch. It's just exciting. It's fast-paced. It's less twitchy than, say, Tekken. For those who've observed Tekken at a Major League Gaming before, there's a lot of this sort of nervous, twitchy movement in Tekken that I found, to be honest, a little bit difficult to watch. So I think, based on what I saw, based on the stream numbers, which I think were around 55,000, I think it's well worth it to pick up Mortal Kombat 9. But, let me ask you, starting with you, John, what do you think? I was in love with it.
I was too, as someone who hasn't really paid attention to Mortal Kombat since the old, Sega Genesis versions and arcade versions. It was refreshing to see a good 2D Mortal Kombat that is something we haven't seen from the series in a while. And so I think a lot of people have kind of disconnected from the series. And one thing you said that really struck me was the twitchy movement of Tekken. a lot of people were saying, well, what is this? Just kind of paying attention, not really paying attention. That watched it said, what is this? Just like a 2D version of Tekken, because they saw juggles and stuff like that. And I'm like, just stop, watch the game, learn the game, and I think you're going to really learn to appreciate it. And multiple people just stopped. They watched Rio make his run through the finals, and were just awestruck by it and said, why have we not been watching this game before this? With like, I think it was PDP before was the one of the first big events for it. And I remember watching that and thinking, well, this is pretty cool. It's something I can get into, but I don't know if it's going to pass Street Fighter. And honestly, I had a much more enjoyable time watching Rio make his run than I did Latif making his run to second place. The game just lends itself to be such a great fighter. Some people will say, oh, well, it's too violent for MLG to pick up. Well, they had Gears of War. I mean, you don't get more violent than that. And then, other people will look at it and say, well, we already have Street Fighter. Don't worry about that. And then you have to go, well, what about Capcom? And I think, just everything about Mortal Kombat, people really got behind it. And it's just kind of the perfect next step for fighting games.
Well, I know, Goldenboy, you were glued to watching all kinds of things. What's your take on what you saw?
Well, I saw, what was it, AE, MVC3, and MK, like everyone else. And out of all the games, though, I would say that MK was the one that grabbed me the most. Not just because, like, seeing Rio's run was just absolutely epic, but it was because it was like you saw the way the combos flowed, and it was like combination of Street Fighter and Tekken and the juggles, which I kind of started to dig the juggles in Tekken later on when I saw it, and like you get like a good flow in there. So I was really, really happy to see competitive MK. So for me, MK was like the overall shining light of the event for me. Then I saw MVC3, and don't get me wrong, there were some moments in MVC3 that were nuts, but it just I can't speak better of MK. It's too good. It was the show stealer for me.
Ain't that the truth? Let me just throw my opinion in here as well and say I'm absolutely floored by the amount of hype that we saw at EVO for Mortal Kombat. It's almost so funny the way that this happened, because at the beginning of the stream for Mortal Kombat, we heard some people in the crowd start chanting Mortal Kombat, and you could hear a few voices in between. Like each time the Mortal Kombat stopped, some people would yell out "sucks." And by the end, the entire crowd was won over. When Rio kept making his comebacks, beating his way through the losers bracket, more and more people were cheering him on. The crowd was hyped up. Rio was even quoted as saying, after the event, because he actually plays with an MP3 player on, so earbuds in his ears while he's playing, he didn't realize how loud, how hyped up the crowd was until after he was done playing. But going back to something that John said a few minutes ago, John was actually talking about the PDP tournament that happened before, and this being the first really big event that's taken place since the big patch, the big balancing changes that have happened with the game. I have to give a big shout out, big kudos to NetherRealm, because at PDP we only really saw about 2-3 different characters that most people were playing. In this tournament at EVO 2011, every single person in the top 8 mained a different character. That is absolutely incredible. That is an absolute testament to the balancing job that NetherRealm has done with the game, and yet also gives the game diversity and a really more, I guess you could say, a more enjoyable feel for the spectator as well, because we're not getting mirror matches every time, like in Tekken, how we see so much Bob or so many players playing Lars or all the other top characters. This is just, it's an absolute joy to watch. It's fun with the fatalities. The crowd was behind it. I really want to see this game get on the MLG circuit.
I want to give a shout out to Slasher at MLG, because when I was at Columbus, Slasher said to me very clearly, Jerry, it's going to be Mortal Kombat 9. And, as much as Slasher and I sometimes poke fun at one another, he was absolutely right. Mortal Kombat 9 should be on the circuit. Major League Gaming needs a fighter. I'm convinced of that. I know Capcom is difficult to deal with. Major League Gaming has signed an all-studio agreement with Warner Brothers Interactive. As far as I'm concerned, fully support Mortal Kombat being on the pro circuit. I think it would be fantastic.
Definitely. I cannot wait for Raleigh, Jerry, since we will officially be seeing Mortal Kombat at the event. Fingers crossed Rio will be able to attend the event. And on top of that, I really hope that Perfect Legend is able to come too, because I would love to see a rematch between the two of them. Big shout out to Perfect Legend as well as VV Rio for an absolutely amazing performance at Evo. And also, obviously, the eye of the world really came down on Evo. Perfect Legend actually became a trending topic on Twitter worldwide right after his win. And not only was Perfect Legend trending, at the end of the night, 3 Street Fighter players, from what I saw, were also trending. So shout outs to Punko, Latif, the American player, as well as Daigo Umehara, all trending topics on Twitter this past weekend. I'd say that bodes pretty well for esports.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jason. I think it is fantastic. Perfect legend, truly a legend. I hope to see many more matches between him and Rio. It was exciting to watch. And as far as Raleigh, if Rio cannot attend, it certainly won't be because of money. He won't have to take up a collection this time. We're obviously going to sponsor Rio and look forward to making sure that a talented player like Rio is able to attend events and continue to entertain all of us. So I look forward to it.
Quick recap of some of the other results at Evo, just because I was personally entertained by the entire stream this past weekend. Street Fighter, one of the big things that did happen. Daigo Umehara was eliminated a little earlier than he's used to at Evo, took 4th place at the event. The American Latif did end up knocking him out of the tournament. His consolation prize for doing that was meeting Punko immediately afterwards. And believe it or not, Latif did manage to knock him out of the tournament as well. He did fall to Fudo, though, a Japanese Fei Long player, who made sure that history repeated itself, as the top 3 from this year did mirror last year, with a Japanese player, an American player, and a Korean player taking 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, respectively. So in Street Fighter, we had Fudo, Latif, Punko, and Daigo to wrap out the top 4. Pretty entertaining, must admit. I was a little surprised with some of the results, but at the same time, kudos to Evo. I think they did manage to break around 80,000 unique viewers at one point during Street Fighter. So yet again, awesome showing.
You know, we're talking about Street Fighter, but I just want to go back into MK real quick and go back to Rio, because he really did stun me at this event. But I also want to talk about, you guys, VVV, and how you're supporting him. I truly feel that what you're doing is the right thing, and supporting a player with such talent and potential and humbleness and just overall character of a champion. I truly feel as if it's something that everyone in the esports community needs to take note of. This is a kid that literally had nothing going into Evo and came out with everything. Kudos to Rio, and of course a big kudos to you guys in VVV.
Thank you, sir.
All right, well, before we move on to Major League Gaming event in Anaheim, there were some other games at EVO, including probably one of the most popular games right now, Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Justin Wong, one of the favorites here in this event, but actually fell a little short from where people expected him to go. We're going to start at the top. The winner was actually Visant, who played Wesker, Hagar, and Phoenix. Phoenix was a very popular character all weekend. We had PR Balrog in 2nd, Justin Wong in 3rd, Combo Fiend in 4th, and also Noah Brown making a surprise appearance up in the top 6.
Yeah, I got a chance to watch the MVC3 event a lot, and because that's actually, I'm a huge comic fan, and I just love the game and all that, so I always take a look at it. But Noah Brown was actually one of the Cinderella stories of the event, because this is a guy who is considered an underling, someone who was below Empire Arcadia. They actually were very how should I say it, not kind to him. I know Sanford Kelly had said some things about him on a stream. I don't recall it. I know this was information that was given to me from a reliable source and, all that goodness. But whatever the case is that Noah Brown went into this tournament with a mission to beat Sanford Kelly, and he dominated him. When I mean dominated, I mean absolutely destroyed him. It was ridiculous. I think he had 2 perfects, and just, it was insane. I can't even begin to tell you, because it was so quick And then when he got up, he was so happy. Like, it was almost as if there were tears coming out of his eyes because he was so happy to finally get like his rightful revenge against someone that had talked down to him. And Noel Brown definitely put himself in a high pedestal. He's now considered one of the best Marvel players in the country, which is no small feat.
All right, great run for Noel Brown, finishing in the top 6. Also with him is Filipino Champ, famous name in the fighting game community, as well as X-Ray and Mine, rounding out the top 8. Also, we had Tekken 6 at the event. The winner of that event was former MLG champion in Core, who mains Bob. We also had NYC Fab in 2nd, Rip in 3rd, and Just Frame James in 4th place.
Aside from Evo, there was one other huge competitive gaming event this past weekend. Of course, I'm talking about MLG Anaheim 2011. And we did see some entertaining events in StarCraft, of course, Call of Duty, and Halo Reach. Instinct running through the entire tournament undefeated. Quantic Leverage retaking their throne in Call of Duty. And I Am MVP running roughshod through the StarCraft II bracket. Pretty impressive results the whole way around. Guys, let's start out with some Call of Duty Black Ops. Mr. Nynjatic, Fly Society, Pool Play. Went 2-2, I do believe. Talk to me about the experience. What happened up there?
Well, Friday, everyone was a little nervous, going up. Our very first match of the day, playing against Fear on main stage. It was a little nerve-wracking, especially with Fear having Fizzerp, which is 2Quick's old teammate. Everyone was a little on edge. They beat us 3-0, but all the maps were close. They were all very close maps. Everyone tried their hardest, but we just didn't get the clutch moments there. Then we ended up playing, I believe it was VWS for our second match that day, and they 3-1'd us. We were able to take one map from them, but still didn't help our overall record on pool play. So we took Friday, we enjoyed the rest of the day, relaxed a little bit, try to shake everything off going into Saturday. And Saturday we were able to go beat Hybrid, which is the team from amateur bracket. Then we ended up playing against Obey, which that was an extremely good series, going all the way down to Game 5 to the very last round of Search and Destroy, beating them 6-5 on S&D. I believe it was Hanoi. It was extremely exciting. Obey was a very strong team. Next, not being as campy as he usually is online, but still doing. Then everyone just played it extremely well.
So let me ask you this question, George. What was the day one challenge for your team? What do you think is the one thing that really stood out as something that maybe had you guys perform less than expected?
A part of it definitely being time zone change. We were all real tired. It was so different. Going to a West Coast event and trying to compete, because I know that was I believe all of our first times going to a West Coast event. So it was very different, and the atmosphere was very different too. There was a lot more spectators. There was a lot more cheering going on. It really also being the team's, again, first time, besides Regulate and Apathy, playing with each other, side by side, it turns into a very different experience, and emotions play out very differently when you're at an event on land than you are online in the comfort of your own home. So it was definitely something that we had to overcome on Friday, and we never did, but we definitely overcame it on Saturday.
Let's talk a little bit about Saturday. Tell everybody what Saturday was like.
Saturday was a really great day until the very, very end, being able to beat Hybrid, beating Obey, being able to take third in our pool, and then playing against Envy at 10 o'clock at night was very nerve-wracking as well. Terrorist, being a member of Envy back at Dallas and Columbus, he played extremely well. He was not nervous whatsoever. Everyone did really good, but again, the little bit lack of communication, time zone change, something that a lot of West Coast players have to deal with all these East Coast events. I give them a lot of props. for being able to come over to East Coast events and get used to the time zone change and still compete very well.
So let's talk about the future. I think those of us who are watching the stream probably have an opinion of some of the players that did well and some that didn't do as well. And I imagine whenever you get disappointed, you may even question the roster changes you did before, or you have to contemplate roster changes now. Where exactly is the team right now?
Well, as of right now, we've already decided to drop Too Quick. We had to. He did not perform as well as we had hoped. He did very well online while we were scrimming, but on land it turns into something very different. It's a very different atmosphere, and he really couldn't cope with it, and it was really hard for him to really get anything going. So we decided to drop Too Quick. Coming up to MLG Raleigh, there's, I believe, only a week until roster lock for pro teams. So any roster changes that happen are going to be happening very quickly and very fast the next couple of days. I know we've been talking. We don't want to make anything official yet on who we're picking up and who else we may or may not be dropping. But I know with what we want, if it goes the way we want it to, I think everyone in VVV is going to be extremely proud of the decision we made.
Well, I don't want to reveal anything yet. There'll be an announcement coming when this is all said and done. So to players that may or may not be let go, good luck to you. What do you see with this short time, George, as going to be some of the challenges for the team?
Really just finding the right players. That's always a big struggle because you can always find someone that's good, but it really comes down to how they mesh with the team. Because again, online, you're no one's sitting next to each other. You're in your home. You're drinking your energy drink or whatever. When it comes down to an event, it's really all how everyone reacts to everything, like in person when someone's sitting next to each other. Emotions start getting really high. They run really high at events, and keeping yourself composed is one key factor as well, finding that in a player. So I think with the player that we've been looking into, they're very composed. They're extremely smart player. They have very good gun skill. But again, I'm not going to mention any names because we don't want to announce anything just yet and get everyone hyped, and then all of a sudden it falls through and it doesn't happen. We've done that too many times, and we don't want to do that to the community again.
Well, let's wish you and the team the best of luck. And if everybody doesn't mind, I think we should talk a little bit about where Call of Duty is today compared to where it was at Columbus. I'm going to start with you, George, and I want to bring you into this, Goldenboy. George, the team, the players, at the level of is it a better game than it was in Columbus? If so, why?
It definitely was, but I think it was more of the spectators. There was so many spectators. Like Sunday, it was packed. Like so many Fear fans, so many Quantic Leverage fans. It was unbelievable. I mean, people cheering. There was chants going on. I bet you StarCraft players were like, "What's going on over there?" StarCraft is so loud, but Call of Duty was trying to be just as loud. Everything. It was so pumped. There was so much energy in the air. It was definitely the spectators that really made that event so much better.
I know that you're saying the fan experience had a lot to do with it being better, but I mean the actual changes to the gameplay. How do you feel that affected it, or did it affect it at all?
I don't see it really affecting it all that much. With S&D, being a minute shorter, there was just a lot less campiness. That's really all I saw in S&D. I thought it was going to be a lot more faster pace, which it was, but it was still along the same pace. People just weren't like waiting in their spawn. People were setting up to get map control first, then looking for players or planting the bomb or waiting to see what other teams were going to do. Domination with the shorter time limit was actually that I think that made more of a difference because it required teams to go for more pushes to get more 3 caps so they can get a bigger lead. So there was definitely a lot more clutch moments in domination, and CTF was still, in my opinion, the better game type to spectate and watch and play. It stayed true to the way it was back in Columbus, so it was good. It was still skillful.
All right, Golden Boy, you were one of those people who played Call of Duty and was spectating from home. What were your thoughts on the effect of the changes?
We definitely saw a lot of good gameplay with S&D. I was definitely excited to watch more S&D as the tournament went on. I ended up finding myself gravitating more to that and more to Flag than I was to Dom. I'm pretty sure, I'm convinced at this point that Domination is just a boring game type. It's one of those where it kind of is largely dependent on, you get the 3 cap right away, and then it's all up to the spawns from that point. Hopefully a nade doesn't like fly over and take you out. Like, to me, like, domination on firing range, that's how I feel about that. But summit domination is definitely one of my favorite ones to watch because of the map layout, how you have to push, how you coordinate. So I don't know if Nynjatic would agree with that, but I'm just not a fan of firing range Dom specifically. But Summit Dom was enjoyable to watch. As far as though the capture the flag and S&D, capture the flag remained unchanged because it was fine the first time. But I did notice that we saw a lot more variety in weapons being used, which was pretty interesting to see. The FAMAS still dominated, but we did see some 74Us, we did see some Spectres, and that was around the gist of what we saw. But at least it was better than in Columbus, where literally everyone was just using a FAMAS. So I was pretty happy about that. Overall, I felt that COD has definitely proved itself to be a very enjoyable spectator game. The new changes to the game types have been a welcome improvement. And I'm just excited to see what changes they make with Raleigh, if they're going to ban the FAMAS, because they have that poll up on the forums right now, whether or not that's going to occur. With 1 month, I don't know if they're going to do it, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, for everyone who is a fan of Call of Duty, you should be aware that there is a poll up. So voice your opinion. But let's talk about what I think was really Call of Duty's finest moment, and that was the final between Fear and Leverage. I thought it was one of those moments. I'm going to start with you, Golden Boy, because you were watching from home, and obviously it was your boys. So talk to us a little bit.
Well, I am good friends with Assassin, so, I will always root for my friend no matter what. We teamed and reached together. So, it was intense. I was disappointed, to say the least, because you have a 3-0 lead going into the final, and then you let us slip away. But I think it was that they just slept on Leverage. Leverage was so hot coming off of that defeat from Optic. Optic really just fell out of steam. Like, they just fell apart. Honestly, especially at that last game where they got 7 capped. That was insane. Leverage was hot. And Leverage, you can never count them out because Scump and Proof are just two dominant players. They're so good. They know what they're doing. They're slayers and they're objective players. And that's scary when you just have someone that's with a flag and still killing you. Like, I can't even begin to fathom how the other team must feel. Leverage definitely put up, they showed why they were the Dallas champs. They showed why they are, the top players in the game. And the addition of Proofy was really good. Hopefully Proofy stays in the team, which I can only imagine he would, but everyone knows he's, famous for leaving for no reason. So let's just hope for the best there. And I expect Fear to do really well going into Raleigh. I assume they're going to keep the same roster because they played really well with that roster. And, we'll just see what happens. Raleigh's going to be an amazing event. I can tell you that much.
Nynjatic, what are your thoughts on the finals this past weekend?
I thought the finals are great. I mean, that's the way the finals should be. Extremely close, extremely good matches. Fear starting off with that 3-0 lead and then actually getting it, taking it to 4-0, and then Leverage coming back. Proofy going off. I was sitting there, I was watching it, and it was just unbelievable. And then in between games, I look at my Twitter stream, everyone tweeting about Black Ops and Proofy and Fear and Leverage and all of them. It was just unbelievable. That's the way finals should be. Great job to Fear. Fear showed everyone that it's really how a team can come together. It's not all just about skill. Fear had a lot to deal with. They came through and they went through pool play. They beat everyone and came to the finals. And yeah, they had a lead, but when you don't warm up that much, and when leverage is coming off of a win from losers finals, it's just it was just great. I still can't get over it. I've been watching it since I've been home to listen to the commentating, and it was just awesome. It was magical. I cannot see any reason why they would try to take this off the circuit right now after what happened at Anaheim.
Yeah, I really wouldn't worry about that. I saw a tweet from Sundance, and the way I read it was that somebody was talking about, what's the sense if you're just going to remove it off the circuit next year? And he said that is not true. So, I think if Call of Duty continues to perform like it did in Anaheim, there's no reason it shouldn't remain, because I agree with all of you. That was a phenomenal finals.
Well, from one really impressive final over to a game where, well, the finals, I guess you could say it was impressive, but in a totally different regard. Let's move over to Halo, where Instinct just wiped the floor with the competition, running through the entire tournament undefeated. This team really is making that God Squad moniker a reality. Goldenboy, let's start off with you. Instinct, what do you think of this team, and what did you think of Halo this past weekend?
Well, a lot of people in the Halo community will contest that Halo Reach isn't a fun game to watch. I disagree with them 110%. I just seem to enjoy watching Instinct run through everyone. I think it's pretty funny because at this point you're going to a tournament not to win, but you're going to a tournament to get second place, because no matter what you do, you're just not beating Instinct. They're just doing something right. They're clicking on all cylinders, and nothing is going to stop them. Now, some may argue that Straight Rippin' will, combat them with practice, because they did not practice at all this event with two players moving, one was away. So, they said it didn't practice much. So I'm interested to see how Raleigh plays out. But after two events, pure domination, and really just a straight ripping team that's going to be playing catch up, I really don't see anyone stopping Instinct, at least until the national finals, which even then is a long shot because this team is just way too dominant. So it definitely was one of the more intriguing events to watch.
Here's my thought on this, and I think it's something that should be something that all competitive gamers are aware of, because there's no denying that Instinct is on a hot streak right now. But every team in every sport also has a cold streak. So it is inevitable that Instinct will not be able to play at this level forever. So my question is, if they don't, who's going to be the one to dethrone them? And I think a lot of people are pointing at Straight Rippin' as a team that could very well do that. But I don't think they're the only team. What do you guys think?
Well, I just wanted to say, Jerry, that Straight Rippin', like I said, could be the team. But imagine if a team like Fnatic Classic comes out of nowhere with more practice, playing as well as they did. Imagine how much of an upset that would be. That Team Classic, you know what I mean? A storied franchise in Halo, but now a part of Fnatic, just comes out of nowhere and defeats Instinct. I have a feeling it's not going to be one of these teams that we're going to expect like Straight. Something tells me it may be a team that just comes from nowhere and just beats them, but barely, though. Not like a blowout, just barely. And that'll definitely change everything in Halo, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't think we should ever shortchange teams like Warriors or Believe the Hype. These are still very powerful teams, and Instinct did not make mistakes. Let's face facts. And it's hard to beat a team that's, like you said, hitting on all cylinders. But they won't always be hitting on all cylinders, and I think that's what's going to make everybody very interested in Rally. Can somebody dethrone Instinct? That's the question.
I don't think it's a matter of can. I think it's a matter of when. It will eventually happen. No team, as you said, can stay on top forever. The Patriots in football, they might have won a couple of Super Bowls back to back. That doesn't mean they're unstoppable, right? So I don't think it's a matter of if. I only think it's a matter of when.
And I definitely think Straight Rippin' needs to get back together now that they have their original squad. They're going to be somebody to do it, but I also think Believe the Hype. Going undefeated in groups and, still finishing very well in the tournament. I think they're going to be one. Them and, as you mentioned, Fnatic Classic are probably going to be the two that I would pick that can really jump up there and give Instinct a run for their money in the long run. And I think, Final Boss had them an amazing run there for a while, but other teams just know how to work and kind of get to that point, and they're going to hit their cold streak, like Jerry said. It's just inevitable to happen.
Of course, if I were Instinct, I would hope my cold streak would come sooner than later and not, in Providence at the Nationals. So, you got to be careful when you peak. And right now they are peaked, and that which is at top must eventually, it's only got one direction to go. It's one of those three questions. Do they have a cold streak early and then they're hot again at the end of the season? Do they plateau and they actually are able to win everything until the end? Or do they end up fizzling out near the very end and they miss out on sort of, the Nationals and getting that number one spot at the end of the year? So it'll be interesting to follow them. But I have a question for all of you. We've got Fnatic who stepped in. Quantic Gaming has spent a lot of money. Out of the blue this event, there was this organization, Eon. Does anybody know anything about Eon?
NV Optic Nation.
No, I can debunk that one. It does not mean Envy Optic Nation. It's from the rumors that are being spread around, because this is more of like a Call of Duty kind of thing, I'm guessing. It has a lot to do with Fwiz. And it has a lot to do, I'm going to guess, with Machinima. From what I'm understanding, it's just a representation, like a team, you know what I mean? Something similar along the lines of EG or, Fnatic or something like that. It's just a big team organization. But my guess is that it is something that is being started by Machinima. Machinima's first sponsored team, you know what I mean? Which has never really happened before. So it makes sense to sponsor the best Halo team right now. Columbus was the best Call of Duty team, and then Envious, which is one of the best teams with media, second to Optic. So everyone's saying we'll find out in Raleigh, blah, blah, blah. But I think it's just going to be another one of those, we're a competitive gaming organization. I wouldn't really expect anything too much out of it, and I expect it to be attached to Machinima in some way, somehow.
Gotcha. Yeah, because they certainly don't have a website or anything that we could see that would be the kind of sponsor. So do you think that these teams actually were getting sponsorship dollars from Machinima, or it's just something they put on their tag to sort of represent something?
I can't even really say, because it's like, you have to think about like the logistics. They're sponsoring 3 teams at this point, if that's the case. And I'm pretty sure they're going to span probably into StarCraft players potentially. It's confusing, but I guess so. I guess the money will come from Machinima. I guess it will be something where Machinima just funds this competitive gaming organization. I could be completely wrong though, but I'm not expecting much innovation out of this. I'm just thinking that it's a lot of hype that they're building up for it, because these are all prominent people within the YouTube community and, just their respective communities in general. So it's really just a lot of hype. Like, you see everyone tweeting the hashtag, what is Eon, like as if it's some like mystical being. Like, really, it's probably just going to be, just your everyday competitive gaming team, and it will be great. And that's that. That's my take on it, at least.
Well, since you mentioned it, why don't we move on to StarCraft? Jason? Wow. Where to begin?
I know, right? How about the incredible performance of all the Koreans? Incredible pool play. I think they only had 2 losses among all the Koreans, and those 2 losses came at the hands of each other. So they went undefeated in pool play against foreigners. Pretty damn impressive, to say the least. In the top 4, we had nothing but Koreans, of course. 3 from Slayers, Gonzi in 4th, Boxer. Kind of, I guess you could say, silencing the critics and taking 3rd. His apprentice, MMA, taking 2nd. And then the 2-time Codes champion, IM MVP, sweeping the tournament, going undefeated, taking 1st place. Incredibly intense tournament. IM MVP continued the trends. Every single player that has won StarCraft II at MLG has been playing there for the very first time. First starting with Huck, Idra, Jinro, and then continuing on to the Koreans this year.
Yeah, if there's such a thing as beginner's luck, which, let me make it clear, I don't think there's any luck in StarCraft. it certainly manifests itself in those players who are at their first MLG. But I think the story to me was something you hinted at, and that was Boxer silencing his critics. I think the Boxer MMA match, 2-1 to MMA, was classic. I think that for myself personally, Boxer, when he was being interviewed and they were asking him sort of about his goals here, how he thought they were going to do in this kind of question, Boxer makes the comment, when people think of MLG, they will think of Slayers. And I thought it was just a cool, elegant, really profound statement to make about the engagement, right? That Slayers really wants to dominate MLG, and that is good for us. And having second through fourth is not a bad place to be. Speaks very, very highly about Boxer and the whole crew there. But also in the same breath, I say it's exciting to see someone like MVP come along and actually take that first place spot. My only complaint, if there's one, and it's not really a complaint, but at this StarCraft event, the Koreans bring in a dominant style, a lot of Blue Flame Hellion harassing. I think they said that Blue Flame Hellions killed more units than any other unit at this event. And when you look at the top 4 players, all Terran, this is how young to me the game still is. These are the things that are still being developed. And the Koreans came in, they had excellent builds, they knew how to execute them. And what I was most interested in was MMA versus MVP. MMA is a little bit more aggressive. MVP is much more of a solid, steady Terran. And at the end, MVP took it. I thought it was a phenomenal, phenomenal ending. Again, I would have preferred not to see pure Terran, but, they came and I thought the builds were just phenomenal.
I have to agree with you there, Jerry. A lot of the highlights of the event, in my mind, came in those final matches. A lot of them involved Boxer. Like you were saying, I was really impressed with the statements he had made, the incredible manners of the Koreans. But also, some of the games were just mind-blowing. For example, Boxer versus Rain, going over 70 minutes. Rain taking it at the very end. Incredible crowd-pleasing moments, too, where they were actually talking in-game back and forth to one another, like... do something, because they were both almost kind of at a stalemate, almost got taken to a draw after 70 minutes. And then Boxer came back after losing that map and went up to win 2-1 in that series. So awesome. And the sportsmanship after that match, where they actually went out and shook hands and like bowed to one another, awesome. Another really impressive moment in that same regard, manner-wise, at the very end of the tournament, after I Am MVP was handed the trophy for winning the entire event, and Boxer was brought up on stage as third place, and afterwards they brought up MMA for second. It was a very subtle movement that Boxer did. But when MMA was walking on stage, he stood next to Boxer, kind of just nodded and put his hand up, and then Boxer actually took him and physically moved him to the center of the stage to give him more attention because he placed higher than him. And I thought that was just such a class act. Well, what an incredible sportsmanship that these players have.
I agree. And, I'll be the first one to admit that I wasn't sure how well Boxer would actually do at this event, but he definitely silenced me, and I think silenced the rest of his critics. Had, a phenomenal event, even though he only finished third. He really showed everybody, and all the Korean players that played really showed how patient they can be, but also how aggressive they can be. I think, we've talked over and over and over again about a player like Idra and how impatient he is. But, you see a player like, we see all the Korean players that were Terran. You talked about the Blue Flame Hellion. They can be aggressive on pushes with like that, especially against a Zerg player. And, they just dominated every single one. You were not going to beat them if you were a Zerg player because of those Hellions. But on the other hand, when they play each other, you mentioned that huge match that went on, for well over an hour. That takes patience. That's something I don't think the majority of players at MLG could have done. And that patience is going to be what wins them games and what keeps them from GGing early in the future. And so I'm really glad we got to see kind of the best of both worlds, aggression and patience. And then we also just got to see, I think they realized coming to America that they're almost putting on a show for us. When we watch them play StarCraft, we're amazed at how good they are. And, I think it's that way in any kind of worldwide event. When a foreign country comes over, you treat the event with class, and you're a guest. And so you treat it like that. You don't just come storming in. And I think they did a really, really good job of showing that class and showing that they don't just want to come in, win, and go home, but that they actually, get it.
Would like to say something. I predicted Boxer to finish third, and everyone got mad at me. Just saying. That's all. I said, all hail the Emperor. He's coming third. And everyone said, you're kidding. Boxer's weak. Boxer doesn't have it anymore. And there you go. So the Goldenboy's right once again. Just saying.
And to be fair to that, I mean, I think that Boxer may have almost come in second. I mean, it's that MMA beat him. I felt fairly soundly the last match, but it was 1-1, and clearly these are two players who've played each other infinite amount of times. I thought, again, to Jason's point, as far as a class act, when Boxer finally GG'd, he said, get number one, please. I also think that what you said, John, is true, that, these players do get it. I think what it is that you can really see their professionalism. They know how to entertain the crowd. They know how to represent their sponsors. They know how to thank the league. I saw one of them thanking Major League Gaming in stream. I can't remember the last time I saw one of, our American player in any game making it a specific point to thank Major League Gaming. I think this is only going to get better. I mean, they've already announced the first two Koreans to Raleigh. Bomber's going to be there. Obviously, MVP is going to return to defend his title. I do think this is going to cause some interesting questions about seeding. John, I think you know a little bit more of this than I do, but how are they going to seed this? What's our best guess?
The problem with seeding here is, and I don't know if it's so much of a problem, but it is an issue, I think, is that a lot of these players come over, they do very well, and then they don't play in another event. And I think Huck is a good example of that. Coming into the event, I think he was actually like 21st seed, which would not have put him in pool play. And Huck is, by far and away, probably to most people, the best foreigner. And if he's going to come to an event that's based in America and not be in pool play, you think something's wrong with that. But the Koreans that came last time didn't come this time, except MMA obviously came because he was the defending champion. And so that allowed Huck to move up and take a spot in pool play. And he was one of the last people to get in pool play. But then you have to have those 4 spots due to the MLG GSL partnership that are given to Koreans. However, now that we've had a couple of events with this partnership, multiple players from Korea have come over and played. And so we have kind of a mixture of players that will most likely show up, and then some you're not so sure about. Because of this, there's been a lot of ties in the seeding. You have Huck and In Control both tied for 10th. Huck, thought of to be a much better player, and In Control has finished 22nd twice in a row now. But he's still the 10th seed because the way MLG does their points, you can show up. If you play a lot of events, you're going to get a lot of points. And so it's almost a thanks kind of thing for playing in those events. Yet Huck, we talked about last week how he doesn't like to travel to all these events. He likes to have his time to stop and practice. And so who knows if he'll come to Raleigh. It's going to be really close, especially if he wins a couple matches in the Code S tournament with GSL. He probably won't be able to come to MLG, so that's going to be a spot that's going to be taken away. Then you go down, you see, players like MC and Boxer. MC came to Columbus, Boxer came to Anaheim. They're both tied for 16th place right now. And so you have to think, well, if one comes, if one doesn't, and who's going to, take that 16th spot? Because the way the pools have gone before, you rank the top 16 teams, and then 17 through 20 go to those 4 GSL players, and the rest get bumped down. Because that's where Liquid Tyler fell in that last spot that got bumped. So he was the first seed coming into open bracket. Well, you got to think, if enough players come, players like Boxer, Ganzi, Dongregu, and Rain could possibly have to play through the open bracket after playing in pools. And so it's a little weird when you think about the seeding on where exactly people will fall when it comes to the Korean players that might have played in pools this time with no points, and now that they have, let's say 620 points, they're going to have to play through open bracket.
Yeah, I wonder if that affects who Major League Gaming invites as well. I wonder if they keep that into consideration. I mean, clearly, to be fair, there are some players, and I think this is something they're going to have to go back and take a look at. I mean, when I look at the performance of like In Control, Machine, Drewby, Cruncher, I have to deeply question, do they belong in that championship bracket? I mean, nothing against them. I mean, they're very well-known players, and, I like some of them, but I'm just not so sure if the way we have the point system set up, if it necessarily works well for StarCraft.
I agree. I think you're going to have your players like Idra and Huck, and Rhett especially had a great event this time. And so they're going to be high enough ranked, and they've earned their points to stay up there. But then I like In Control a lot. I think he's a great guy. And, he's probably one of my favorite StarCraft players in America. However, you can't deny the fact that he's finished 22nd twice and still has a top 10 seed. It's hard to get around that for a player like that, but it's also hard to get around it for a player like Dongregu, who's 21st, had a great event this time, finishing in the top 6 in his first MLG event, and had a pool position from GSL. And now if he does come back and compete, playing for Complexity now, he's going to have to drop down and play an open bracket, and most likely won't even be the first seed in open bracket. If everybody comes back, even players like Boxer will have to drop down, and Sheth, who got a Code A invite, will have to drop down. Ganzi, Rain, all these players are going to have to drop down, while players who haven't been performing, like In Control, can continue to stay up there.
Yeah, I think that's going to cause a huge problem for a lot of people looking at this. And I mean, I guess if they're going to do this, that's why I almost feel like, it's not really going to be fair no matter what they do per se, just because they, borrowed the same system that they have for Halo. And I feel like it's almost unnecessary here. And when I look at where these players are, if you start to look, you get a lot of ties. I think at this match, for example, you're talking about In Control, who I agree is a great guy, but at the end of the day, he kind of went 3-7. And when you look at the actual number of games won and lost, right, it's 5-12. I don't think that necessarily is what we want to see. Pardon me, that was Machine was 5-12. In Control went 4-15. So I don't know if that's necessarily where we want some of those players to end up. They end up playing more matches, but they're not doing very well.
Right, and I think players who have been involved with MLG for a long time, people like me and you, and a lot of people that have a console background especially, they know how this works. They know that as long as In Control shows up, he's going to get plenty of points to probably keep his seat for the rest of the year, as long as he shows up and plays and he won 1 game out of 6. Okay, well, he's got enough points to stay in it. But players from outside of MLG that maybe are coming into this only because of StarCraft, and they're used to seeing how things are done in Korea, how things are done with GSL, that they were done with the Pro Leagues before with Brood War, WCG, Intel Extreme Master, stuff like that. They're going to come in and see, all right, well, let's look at the rankings. And we have Slush and Kiwakaki and In Control and Hey Pro and TLO over Boxer, Ganzi, Dongregu, Rain, July, Losira. They're thinking, okay, how are these players ranked above them? You see Huck and In Control in the exact same spot. And you ask probably any StarCraft fan, they're going to say, well, Huck would win that, easy. He's a much better Protoss player than In Control is. Well, In Control is loyal to MLG. He plays in every event. He's always there, promoting the event, promoting his own team. He's just that kind of player that's always there. And so he's going to be rewarded for it by just showing up. And so it's, I think, to the outside scene of MLG, who's not used to the way they've done things with Halo and with Call of Duty and Gears of War and all the other games, it's going to be a little iffy to them on why they keep the system. But I can understand MLG keeping it because that's just the way they've done things.
John, you bring up some really good points, and I cannot wait to see how these seating issues turn out in Raleigh. Less than a month away already. I cannot wait. I will be there in person. Goldenboy, Nynjatic, huge thanks to the both of you for stopping by the Losers Bracket this week and sharing your insight with us on all the games that we all were enjoying this past week as a part of, in my opinion, what was possibly the biggest weekend ever in competitive gaming. So, Goldenboy, let's start with you. If there's any shout-outs, please throw them out.
Well, first off, I would like to thank VVV. This is the third time I've been on this show, and I am super happy to always be on this show because it's probably one of the best podcasts I listen to while I'm at work every end of the week. So thank you so much once again. I'd like to give a shout out to my friends in Fear. They did amazing this weekend, and Assassin is he is a beast. I'd also like to give a shout out to a few of my friends. Rob Skew's been helping me out with the Behind the Mic series, and Ghost, who has also been helping me out with a little bit with the Gamo website. And I never really did this, so I just want to give a shout out to my wife for standing and listening to me talk to no one for the last hour and a half. So thank you very much, and I appreciate always being on this show.
That's awesome. Nynjatic, you're up, buddy. Please, if you have any shout outs, let's hear them.
Really, just again, VVV Gaming. I love you guys. You make me giggle like a schoolgirl every time I say the name, and especially Blazik, Richter, VVV Ninja. All you guys that I met from VVV out there. Thank you for coming out, supporting us, supporting the team. Just hanging out, having a good time. It's always fun.
Yeah, let me actually throw a shout out VV Blazik for all the hard work he put in at Anaheim this past weekend as well. We definitely appreciate all you do for our community. And that actually is going to bring us to the end of the Losers Bracket this week. I want to give a big shout out to all of VV's sponsors like Normal, SteelSeries, Gamer Grub, Control Freak, MusicSkins.com, and Custom Ink. Additionally, thank you to the band Power Glove for supplying the music you hear each week on our show. Thank you to the VV Gaming community and the entire competitive gaming community for all of your feedback, support, questions, comments, concerns, everything that you feed back to us. We are greatly appreciative of all of it. Be sure to stop by our podcast homepage. The website, of course, is vvgaming.podbean.com. You can also subscribe to us on iTunes. Just search for VV Gaming. We'll pop right up. Additionally, you can email us at thelosersbracket@vv-gaming.com or follow us over on Twitter. There we are simply known as Losers Bracket. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we hope that you enjoyed this past weekend as much as we did. We will be seeing you back here again next week, and until then, take care.
We'll see you next week, guys, and make sure to check out QuakeCon this weekend.
Goodbye, everyone. Have a good week.